And yeah, I'm really excited to hear more about Packit, which is a free GitHub app and GitLab integration, which allows you to test your packages for Fedora.
Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to our talk about Packit projects and how we integrate upstream projects to Fedora Linux. So I'm František, I work in Red Hat in the Packit team, and I'm responsible for the upstream part of the Packit workflow. Tomas, can you please shortly introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, I'm Tomas. I'm engineer and product owner on the Packit team, and here today we are going to talk about Fedora and Packit. So back to you, Franta.
Okay, so let's begin by having a look how the code gets to Fedora Linux users. So on one side, we have developers. On the other side, we have users. Users want to install and update the application, and that's why we have distributions to help with this. And the question or the problem is what's in the middle. What needs to be done to get from the developer, from upstream, down via the distribution, via downstream to the user. So let's take a look what's done here in Fedora specifically. So we can start in upstream where all the development is being done. Developers can use various Git forges like GitHub, GitLab, or they can use other versioning systems as well. Developers are usually not related anyhow to the distribution, so they can release new version when they want and in the state of the projects they want. Then we can move down to the distributions. So in Fedora, we take the upstream release, the archive, and put it to a database, archive database. In Fedora, we call it look-aside cache. Then we can move to the dist-git, the distribution git, where we have all the distribution data stored. When speaking from the point of view of distributions, we usually don't speak about applications, but about packages. There does not need to be one-to-one mapping between application and package. And for each package, we have one Git repository. For each Fedora version, we have one Git branch. And we have a main branch for Rawhide, the Fedora development version. In this repository, we can have multiple files, and the core one is spec file. It's the recipe of the package. It contains some metadata like package name, package version, and relation to other packages like the requirements for building, installing, and so on. It also specifies the sources and patches. Also, we need to specify the steps that needs to be done to build, test, or install the instruction. You might wonder why we need patches. In idle world, we don't need them in distribution. We don't need to change the upstream version in downstream, but sometimes it's necessary. We need them to make the application even work, or we need to take some bug fix or security fix from new version and put it to the older versions and so on. So sometimes they are needed. Here you can see the front end of the dist-git, which is called Packure, and it acts like a regular Git forge we are used to. You can create pull requests, you get the CI results, and so on. Then, when we take spec file, sources, and patches, we can create source RPM, which is a non-binary, non-compiled version of the package. If we build it, compile it, we can create RPM. And this process is architecture and version specific. And for that, we use Koji as our build system, as you can see in the screenshot, and it's located on koji.fedoraproject.org. Before the build or the new version gets to the user, it needs to go through the update system. In Fedora, maintainer can create an update. What it means is that the build is moved to the update testing repository, which acts as a kind of staging environment where all the updates are waiting together to get to the stable repository. Users can then optionally install those packages and vote, put a positive or negative vote. And once we have enough votes, the build is moved to the stable repository. For update systems, we use Bodhi. And finally, we can install the update or update it the application using the terminal tools like DNF or YAM, or some graphical interfaces like GNOME Software Cockpit and so on. So to get the new update from developer to user, we need to take the upstream release, put it to look-aside cache, then make the change in the distribution git, then trigger the build, wait for the build to finish, create update, and hopefully after a few days we get the update to the user. And with this, I will pass my word to Tomas, who will describe the role of Packit in this project.
Okay, thank you, Franto, for a nice overview of how we do it in Fedora. So let's get back to the list. And there is one thing that was missing for us here in that list, and that was the integration of the upstream piece to the distribution itself. Because if you think about it, that if an upstream project does a release and then needs to wait a few days to get some feedback from users in this particular distribution, like that's kind of slow. It'll be very nice to get that feedback right away when you are working on the feature in a pull request or like in subsequent pull request. So this was the main reason that we started Packit, and it's like one of the main goals for us. Next slide, please. To make it available for our users to install Git Packit into their GitHub projects and be able to run RPM builds and run tests so that they can actually see if their change is working in Fedora Linux or CentOS Stream. The other part is that in the list which Franta showed, many of these steps are manual and even depend on each other. So for example, you need to do a build first, then wait for it to be done so that you can create a new update. And many of these steps can be actually automated. And that's another thing which we are trying to improve, to automate these steps so that people like upstream developers or downstream developers don't need to wait for all these things to happen, and some automation can do it for them. So if you are still wondering what Packit actually is, yeah, it's actually a GitHub app and it's a GitLab integration. So if you want to start using it, just install the app for your projects or set up the webhooks for GitLab. Then you need to provide one small config file. So in this case, it's like 17 lines. And to be honest, the lines 3 to 17 are optional. They're our default. So you only need like 3 lines, and that's passed to the spec file. So Packit needs to know how to build your project. So that's the main requirement. You need to provide the RPM spec file, and you can get one from Fedora easily. There are many spec files there. And once you have this, we need to approve you for usage for legal reasons. And then you are all set and you can start using Packit in your upstream projects and get those RPMs. So that's the first thing you would get. Next slide, please. That you would get RPM builds of your changes or commits or releases. You can get them, install them, share them with friends, and test your changes right away on live distro or in containers. And if that's not enough, you can even write automated tests and run those tests on Fedora, CentOS, or even other distributions or versions of distributions. These are running in disposable VMs. And if you don't have good automated tests, we have one which is very solid, and it's an installation test. So we just try to install that RPM, which was built in the previous step, so that you know that it would install on the target distribution version, so that you would know that the dependencies are same. This testing piece is run by a different team, not by us, and we are closely collaborating with them. And for the automation piece, the functionality in Packit is called propose downstream, and it's triggered when you create a new upstream release. This will trigger the propose downstream job, and the outcome is that the release is going to be propagated into Fedora distribution Git in form of pull request. So this is the outcome, and you can even see that the CI within Fedora was triggered, that a build was done and tests were triggered. And for the proposed downstream part, in coming months, we'd like to completely automate it as much as possible. So hopefully in 2 or 3 months, we will share that with you. We also have front end. For a long time, we were thinking that it would be just enough to use Git furges as our interface, and it still works well today. But after some time, we realized that we want to see, like, we want to have introspection to Packit itself, like what it's working on and what are our users and what pipelines or jobs are being running, or even for our project. So we started a dashboard. It's available over here, and you can go there and see who is using Packit or what's happening in the system right now. And finally, my last slide is about SourceGit. It's our fairly big project. As Franta was talking about the distribution Git, you could see that it's like specific type of Git repo for sake of Fedora, how we are maintaining sources. But there is also a strong desire to maintain the distribution package in a different way, which is similar to how upstream does it, which means that you have code in your repository and commits are actual code changes instead of some like checksums and the changes as files, meaning those patches. So we are trying to figure out this workflow, how to do it for Fedora and for CentOS. And as you can imagine, creating new development workflow for several distributions is probably not an easy task. So we are working on it already for quite some time, and we already have plenty of done. And this would be worth of talking for a whole session. So this is just one slide for 1 or 2 minutes. So that's another thing which we are working on. And that was actually last slide. Thank you for having us, and thank you for coming to our session.
Thank you guys for being here. And yeah, if there are any questions, we have like 5 minutes. So we have one question from the chat room. The GitHub action of Packit right now doesn't support actions like restart. Is that planned?
I think currently the Packit is not used or supported as a GitHub action, but if the ask was for restarting jobs, it's newly possible by the restart button near the check runs UI on GitHub. So now you can achieve this.
Yeah, and we also have done some research how to provide Packit as a GitHub action. So hopefully in coming months, we would make that available.
There's a new question coming in. Is it possible to build using multiple spec files, for example, one of OpenSUSE and one for Fedora Rawhide and one for each Fedora release?
I think it's, Tomas might correct me, but it's possible to do it by defining multiple jobs for each distribution or release, and then provide a different spec file or download it from the dist-git or generate it or somehow get it, and specify a different one.
And then here's one more question. Is there support or planned support for self-hosting the infrastructure behind Packit?
The all code we have is available on GitHub, github.com/Packit. So in the deployment repo, you can take a look how we deploy it, but it's currently deployed only by ourselves. We have staging one and production one. So if you are interested in this, you might get in touch with us and try it. We are not against, just that no one else is doing that probably.
I currently don't see any more questions coming in. But yeah, thanks a lot for coming to PackagingCon and presenting.
Yeah, thank you all.